Hello and welcome to Writers and Books Visiting Author Series. My name is Dan Hurd. I'm the Director of Adult Programs. Writers and Books is a nonprofit literary arts center in Rochester, New York. We offer readings, workshops, a bookstore, and literary programming for people of all ages and backgrounds. You can find more information at our website, wab.org. Please say hello in the chat and let us know you're there. Feel free to submit questions to the chat or the Q&A function. Books are available through our bookstore, Ampersand Books. I'll put the link in the chat. Writers and Books would like to call attention to the complex and troubled history of the lands on which we live and work. We are hosting this event from the unceded ancestral homelands of the Onondaga, or the people of the Great Hill. In English, they are known as the Seneca people, or the Keeper of the Western Door. We're so happy to have Carley Moore with us tonight. First, we'll hear her read, then she'll be in conversation with Sejal Shah. Sejal Shah is the author of the award-winning essay collection, This Is One Way to Dance. Her stories and essays have appeared in The Guardian, Brevity, Conjunctions, Guernica, Kenyon Review, Literary Hub, Long Reads, and The Rumpus. She recently completed a story collection with images. She lives in Rochester, New York. The author Michelle T. has said, Carley Moore's voice is a necessary joy in our current times. With each of her work, her skills get sharper and her heart cracks wider. Panpocalypse is a masterpiece of fierce, queer honesty, taking on the intricacies of our bodies and our minds, the city and the state, with fearless passion and bold political intelligence. We need this book right now, and we'll need it in all the nows to come. Carley Moore is also the author of the essay collection 16 Pills, the poetry chapbook Portal Poem, the young adult novel The Stalker Chronicles, and the novel The Not Wives, published by Feminist Press in 2019. Her work has appeared in the American Poetry Review, Brainchild, the Brooklyn Rail, the Journal of Popular Culture, and other publications. She is a clinical professor of writing and contemporary culture and creative production in the Global Liberal Studies program at NYU, and a senior associate at Bard's College Institute for Writing and Thinking. Carley, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate the introduction, and thank you to Writers and Books, and thank you to Sejal for inviting me. Sejal and I have wanted to do something together forever, so this is an incredible treat. And thank you to everyone who is here on the Zoom. I'm really happy to have you. So I'm going to read a little bit for about 20 minutes from Panpocalypse, and then Sejal and I will be in conversation. But here's Panpocalypse. Sejal, thank you for holding up all my books. I'm gonna just go with the beginning. I'm also gonna set my timer. Feel free to put questions in the chat as they come up, or anything you notice. One of the things I loved about Zoom readings early on was just like people putting language in the chat. You can also just sit back and enjoy yourself. I'm going to start with, I'm starting at the very beginning. Robot Dictator. Hi, this is a test. How do you like my voice? This is a work of autofiction. Some things are true, some things are made up. I am currently making this as you are reading it, and because of my various disabilities, I'm dictating it. I think it's going to work. Robot dictation device, robot dictator. If you can learn my voice, if you can fix my mistakes, then we can write this book together. Good little robot, good little dog, good little machine. Would you like us to give you a name? What do you want to be called? Capitalize, delete, backspace, backspace, backspace. I don't know what to call you yet, so let's see what happens, little robot. I need you because of my muscles, because the pain in my shoulder and my hips doesn't go away. It's worse during the pandemic, but everything is worse during the pandemic. This is a weekly gift should you need it. I make it for both of us so that we don't go crazy. But honestly, I'm already mentally ill. It's for the community, because now more than ever, we must make our own things and take care of ourselves as best we can. Let me know if you think of a name for my dictation robot. Sometimes the robot breaks and can't hear me, and I get fed up and type and hurt my muscles anyway, because that's what we do. We work through pain. So you may experience disjointedness or breaks or spasms in the text and in me. They can't be helped. Kids always used to call me a spaz when they wanted to fuck with me, and I'm reclaiming it. They weren't wrong. They were just assholes. Disjointed time, broken time, nonlinear time, lockdown time, sick time. I aim to fuck with time because mass illness has fucked with time. We're all disabled now. My bike. I buy a bike. A store in the East Village is open for essential workers of the pandemic. Delivery people on bikes, mostly immigrants, often undocumented. In line with me, there's a man with a broken bike chain and two friends with a bike that needs new brakes. A couple of homeless men wander by. What are you waiting for? A bike shop, we mumble through our masks. There's a light drizzle. I fold and unfold my umbrella. It's a gray day, not a riding day. A man in a motorized wheelchair zips up too close to me so that he can ask if the tobacco store next to the bike shop is closed. I think so. It looks like it, I say through my purple bandana mask with raccoons on it. My friend sent it to me. She's with her wife uptown in the Bronx where they live now. I miss her, but I can't see her. I can't see any of my friends, and I'm single and clinically depressed, so I cry a lot. I have a few casual lovers, but I can't get to them. I miss touch. Sometimes I feel abandoned by my friends who made queer germ circles without me, friends who left the city for country houses, friends who are married or coupled. I feel unitless, adrift on the waves of my own tears. The man in the wheelchair speeds away and onto the bike lane without replying. I love how fast people in motorized wheelchairs go, how many more I've seen in the street since lockdown, alongside of bikes, taking up the middle of the road. I like seeing people in wheelchairs in the middle of 2nd Avenue. It's a glorious fuck you to the walking, a middle finger to the abled city, the not sick city. The whole city is quarantined now. My parents never got me a wheelchair, though in those last few years when things were really bad, I would have been better off with one. But maybe I didn't want one. Maybe I was steeped in my own shame and refused one. Inside the bike shop, a man in his late 20s or early 30s helps me. I called ahead to see whether they had a bike for me, and they did. He is kind, sweet, and wears a green and yellow mask. I wonder if his partner made it for him. I say, I have a disability, so my balance isn't always great, but I can ride, though it's been a while. I need to be able to touch the ground with my feet when I stop, and I need a cruiser with a wide seat and maybe more than 3 gears. I want baskets for groceries, and the color would be great. I think I have a good bike for you. He's a total professional, not a bike bro dick. He goes to the back and then wheels out my bike. She's magenta, low with cream-colored rims on fat tire wheels. It's a step through so you can get on and off really easily. It's really light too. We pick out my seat and have an honest conversation about my ass. Maybe our masks make it easier for us to do this. Some of us get very sweaty and some of us don't, he says. It's just about bodies and where your sit bones are located. I get really sweaty and my butt is big. Got it. He shows me the widest, softest seat. I am also thinking about my pussy and that she needs me to take care of her. More than anything, I want to feel good on this bike and I want to connect with her. I need endorphins because the pandemic has made me so depressed I'm afraid I'm going to have another breakdown. We pick out locks, the basket, a helmet. I choose the ventilated one over the cuter, more old school one because I know how sweaty my head and face get. I max out a credit card to buy her. I am a master at maxing out a credit card, paying it down little by little, and then maxing it out again in a moment of desperation and/or longing. My bike guy seems excited for me. I'll call you. It'll be ready tomorrow. I'm numb when I leave, panicked about the money. I am waiting for my stimulus check, which I've already decided to give away, but there is suffering in the world and I have bought an object. First ride. We're almost 2 months into the pandemic. The day I pick up my bike, it's sunny and I'm sweating. At lights, I stop. I stick to the bike lanes mostly and just pedal. My leg muscles tingle and my heart beats harder in my chest than it has since the lockdown began. Before I really know what I'm doing, I'm at the mouth of the Williamsburg Bridge. I stare up at the incline. Can I do it? Should I try? I take a picture of it with my phone and text my friend and ex-husband Guapo that I'm going to try. He knows my disability better than anyone, except maybe my mom. Do it, he texts back. The incline is long but not steep. I pass walkers and shift gears. When bikes pass me, I'm pulled toward them like I'm on some invisible puppet string. I will have to think about this, but I don't stop. My legs burn and I switch gears, panting but riding, going, gone. What if I never go back to Manhattan? What if I stay in Brooklyn with my friends? What if I find a secret bar where people are allowed to touch? At the crest of the bridge, I wave and talk to the river. Hi, East River. Hi, garbage barge. I love you. I count masks and remember that bikers are queer and cute, at least the ones coming at me from Brooklyn. Black bandana mask, black cutoff jean shorts, rainbow flag mask, mullet and red bandana, black mask, no mask, no mask, no mask. The city bikers have fewer masks, are taller and white, straight men and their tall women. Nothing can touch us, their maskless faces say. Orthodox women and their teenage daughters walking, never riding, maskless. My muscles burn and I get off to rest at a little inlet on the bridge before the decline into Brooklyn. I'm almost to the other side where nothing is open and no one can see me. My heart keeps pounding out of my chest. I'm happy. For once, in the last 2 months of depression, anxiety, and worry, I feel joy. There are 2 women on roller skates in the inlet. Their skates are gold and they wear hot pants and crop tops. One says to the other, "Got it, go," and starts to film her. The starlet waggles her tongue at the camera and shoots the duck, pumping her leg to keep herself moving. I smile at them through my mask, but they can't see me. I keep forgetting that no one can see my mouth and nose. No one can see my expressions. I have walked the city for 25 years full of expressions. I have smiled, frowned, laughed, and yelled, and now I am faceless. You are so pretty, I want to shout at them, but I don't because I don't want to bother them and I don't remember how to speak in public. I keep riding down the slope of the bridge and into Brooklyn. When I get home a few hours later, I look at the queer, sad, desperate, lonely dating app, Lex. This isn't an insult. It's just how it is for single queers right now, or maybe since the beginning of queers. Longing all around. A new post, an unlinked to anybody account, no pics. Are you lonely? Do you want to fuck and be fucked? Do you want to touch each other underground like they did in Paris at Le Monocle in the 1930s? Shh, it's against the law. I type a quick message into the ether. Yes, but how? In the morning when I check my phone, the ad is gone, but there's a message. We'll find you. Brief history of bikes. I'm gonna have a little sip of water. My first bike is beautiful, a sparkly green Shearn. with a cream-colored banana seat, tall handlebars, and white streamers. I love that bike, but learning how to ride it is an early confrontation with the fact that something is wrong with me. My father takes off the training wheels, runs alongside me, and lets go, like you see in the movies, except I fall, again and again. We try on the sidewalk, in the street, in parking lots over and over again, in every corner of this small, dying Rust Belt town. We try for 2 years. I fall so many times my knees and shins are perpetually scabbed. I eat gravel and my dad pulls it out of my bottom lip with tweezers. My mom puts peroxide on my wounds and I listen to my skin sizzle and bubble, crying and wincing. The neighborhood is either rooting for me or against me. I can't tell, but I'm definitely a watched object. My parents and I wonder out loud if I can do it. Can I learn how to ride a bike? At that point, we don't know what's wrong with me. There is a long search. One doctor says cerebral palsy, but my parents don't believe him, and they're right not to. But for the longest time, I am a mystery. I can do a lot in the morning and very little at night. It's totally weird, even to me. 2 years passed. I finally learned to balance. My mom and I are on the track at the local community college. She's wearing an orange sweatshirt. My dad jogs slowly. My brother zips along on his bike. He's 3 years younger, but learned to ride in a day. I hate him for that, for not having what I have, for being well and fit, my parents' dream child. My mom holds onto the bike seat, gives me a push, and lets go. For the first time in 2 years, I don't fall. My body finally understands the bike or feels the center of gravity or something. I'm stunned. The joy I feel as I take off cancels out that hate. I leave them all behind as I circle the track. I pass my father who is cheering. My mom jumps up and down. The wind blows through my bowl cut. I am free. I can leave them behind, but I don't yet. They are watching me and it feels good. Somebody steals my green Schwinn. I park her on the side of my house near the kitchen window. I'm in a hurry because I have to pee, so I don't put her in the garage. In the morning, I sob when I find out she's missing. We drive around the neighborhood looking for the person who took her. My father is livid. He has a thing about our stuff, our lack of respect for the objects he buys us. You will have to learn your lesson. If you won't take care of your things, who will? My mom can't help me because my dad has already decided my punishment. You'll have to save your allowance, she says, and hugs me. Sometimes when my parents fight about how dirty the house is, he relents and agrees to help clean. My mom leaves to go to the mall to get a much-needed break, and my dad yells, if you don't pick up your fucking toys in an hour, they're all going in the garbage. It works, but I cry as he dangles my Barbies over the trash chute. I understand that I'm not allowed to break and lose my things, but he is. Eventually, I get a shitty orange and yellow bike from Kmart. The name Prairie Flower is stenciled on her frame. She sucks, but I ride her anyway and pretend to my friends that she's amazing, even though her chain falls off whenever I pick up speed. In high school, I get a cream cruiser with a brown seat. At some point, my brother steals this bike from me and sells it. My parents don't believe me, but he confesses it to me in the family room where we keep and tell our secrets. It's also where he gets wasted and I let 2 boys finger fuck me so that I can wear a tampon. I have a clear goal and I need their willpower to break my hymen. Boys aren't difficult like girls, they're always willing. College for me is bikeless. I take the bus except for one time when I ride my roommate's 10-speed in the middle of the night because her boyfriend sits on my bed and won't leave. The rest of the house is asleep. I say I have my period and he lets me go. Tires are totally flat, but I keep going until I break the rims. I pass a dark cemetery and pray he's not following me. The seat hurts my crotch and I can't maneuver the curved handlebars. I make it to my boyfriend's house just as the sun is coming up. He's trying to break up with me and has banned me from his apartment, but lets me in because I'm so scared. For a long time, I associate bikes with boys. My boyfriend in my 20s, the first man I thought I would marry, is a cyclist, Austrian, austere about food and exercise. I am my usual chubby self and still at war with my body about exercise, which I find shameful and disgusting. We live in New York and I'm in awe of the subway, so I don't understand why anyone would choose to bike when we could take this marvelous, disgusting, fascinating system of tunnels anywhere we want to go. You're always riding away from me, I tell him. He never officially dumps me, but increasingly removes himself from my life until I'm living alone in a sublet where I get robbed and mugged in the same week. In my 30s, my husband Guapo and I buy bikes together. He cajoles me into riding. This is before the city has bike lanes and speeding trucks and cars rattle me. I am out of shape and the big hill in the Prospect Park Loop feels like a defeat to me. When we separate, we sell our bikes. Aside from one terrifying ride on a city bike, I don't bike again for 6 years. Dopamine. I still struggle with how to describe it and what to call it. The technical name is long and needs repeating. People sometimes like to write it down. It's not something even your average neurologist has heard of. It's a movement disorder. 1 in 2 million people have it. I don't make enough dopamine, so I take synthetic dopamine. I do okay now. That's what I say if I don't want to talk about it or I don't know you. If I feel open to you, I might say, I couldn't walk very well until I was 11. I might say I was very sick. I hardly ever say, I wanted to kill myself. I was in so much pain. Or I made a plan for how I might do it. If we eat a meal together, I will say, I take a lot of medication, so you know I'm not just popping pills. The hardest of all to say is I am sometimes in a lot of pain, because then people want me to describe the pain. It's a tender gesture, but it takes so much effort to describe pain. My muscles are tight, I may offer to get people to stop asking, because pain isn't describable. It is there or it isn't. If you are not in pain, you can forget what it feels like. If you are in pain, it colors and shapes everything. As I write this, I have a terrible headache. I am hoping it will go away because I took my medicine. When I buy my new magenta bike, I'm in pain. Pain decides to buy a bike. Pain wants an escape. Pain doesn't give a fuck about money. Pain will spend your money. The wonderful essayist Sonia Huber titled her essay collection, Pain Woman Takes Your Keys. Damn, is she right about that? A pain woman is not rational. She takes what she needs. And I'm gonna stop there. Sejal, if you wanna come back now. Hi.
Hi, Carley, that was amazing.
Thank you.
It was so nice to hear you read. I got your book in March and you reminded me that as I was reading it, I think I was texting you what I underlined, and I underlined so much.
Yeah, I loved that you were doing that. It was really great to see the places that were resonating for you. And I also just love hearing from people as they're reading. It's so fun.
I was thinking about the fact that I met you, that we're both from Western New York, but that I met you in New York City, right? I mean, yeah. In my memory, it was actually 20 years ago, right? Stephanie Dunson said, oh, you should meet my friends Matt and Carley. And I, heard her talk about you, and we went out to dinner, and I was like, wow, she's from Western New York. And she managed to get to New York City. And I remember that you had written your dissertation on 17 magazine, and
yeah, I wrote about teenage girl writing in 17.
I didn't even know that you could do that. So, I mean, I sent my stuff to 17, right? Like, what girl?
Yeah,
yeah. No, sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, I didn't really know I could write a dissertation about 17 magazine either. Yeah, I was a reader of it, like many people of our era. And Yeah, the first thing I ever wrote to 17 was actually a question. I wrote to them and I asked them how to flirt.
Wait, were you writing to Sassy also, or just 17?
I just wrote to 17. I don't think Sassy was out yet. I think I was like 12 or 13, and it was a genuine question. Like, I remember thinking, I don't know how to do this, and I don't know who to ask, so I'm going to write to them. And they sent me a really nice response and like several articles that had already been published in the magazine about how to flirt. And I was just floored that they would actually help me. And and then later I was looking for an archive of girl writing, because that had been so much of my focus on my PhD work. So 17 was available and had a long span of time to look at, and it had a lot of girl writing in it, especially in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So yeah, that's what led to that. But that is definitely that was definitely like another, I mean, it was me, but I do think of that as like, I can't believe I wrote that dissertation. I mean, that's how it is with a lot of books, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was another era. I think I brought that up to say that, you know, I remember meeting you and thinking you were really cool. And then I got a job in Massachusetts and I moved there in Iowa. And by the time I moved back to New York, I don't actually think we saw each other in all the years that I lived in.
I don't think so. I think I mean, I remember meeting you too and thinking the same thing, and also thinking like, oh my gosh, 2 Western New York people at this table. And now we both got to New York. So I also thought it was a really big deal. And then I think I started to see you at Bard College when you would come up for workshops, and I was leading workshops.
Oh yeah, you're right. I forgot about Bard, sort of. I was thinking about how it was through encountering your writing. I mean, reading 16 Pills in particular. This was, and I know it's not your first book, but reading essays that had to do with disability and pain and marriage and divorce and loneliness. And I think, you know, I didn't perceive you as anything except extraordinary when I met you in New York. Like, I mean, Jamestown is further away from New York City than Rochester. Yeah, and I had to fight really hard to get out of here. And I'm back.
Yeah, I mean, I think in 16 Pills, in a way, 16 Pills, my essay collection, and Panpocalypse, I think in some ways are like sibling books. I mean, The Knotwives and Panpocalypse are both novels and autofiction, so they have that in common. But they have other things in common too. But 16 Pills and Panpocalypse they both really explicitly deal with disability. And 16 Pills not so much with queerness, because I hadn't come out when I was writing those essays. But writing the essays for that collection, I really did start to write about my most authentic self and to write explicitly about disability. So, and in Panpocalypse, I was really, really trying to do that through this queering of the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. So, you know, the book is about a woman, a professor, a single mom, living in a dorm, living in a faculty apartment, it's during the lockdown in New York City, 2020. And she gets a bike in order to see her friends or just have some movement, which you heard in the beginning. And she also starts hearing about this underground club that she wants to go to where people can touch. And she's also looking for her lost love, Eurydice. And the main character goes back and forth between being Orpheus and Carley and Charlie. There's eventually time travel, which was not something I anticipated. But yeah, those books are I think a lot of the seeds of Panpocalypse are in 16 Pills.
That's so interesting to hear. I mean, I have so many questions for you. A few of the things that I wanted to bring up, you know, just what you have at the beginning. The following chapters were published weekly online during the COVID-19 pandemic in New York City in the summer of 2020. so your process, how did you manage to write a book during the pandemic about the pandemic, and then also about genre? I love that this is a work of autofiction, and then dictation and voice texting. I guess there's so much, and biking, being able to move through the world, and what it's like when it's difficult to move through the world.
Yeah.
And also say that, your writing spans across all genres. So
yeah.
How do you do it?
Thank you for noticing all those things. So Feminist Press published Panpocalypse and also The Not Wise, and I love Feminist Press so much. I had like 20 pages of this book, the beginning, a lot of what I read mostly, and I felt it was like really important to document somehow like life in New York City during the lockdown, and just the complete eeriness of it, and emptiness of Lower Manhattan in particular. And I also really wanted to give something to the community, whatever community, like I don't know. I wanted to just give something for free for people to do. So I wrote to Feminist Press. I wrote to Jamia Wilson and Lauren Rosemary Hook, and I said, I have this idea to serialize a novel, and here's the first 20 pages. What do you think? And they said yes, which was amazing and wonderful. And that they were, and at that point, I had like 40 pages at that point, and they were like, okay, so we'll serialize the first half this summer, and then you'll write the second half, or then you'll write the rest of it, and we'll publish it as a whole book. So that was really smart of them, because I hadn't even imagined having a print book. So yeah, I kind of tricked myself into writing a book. Like I've always loved the stories of serialization, and like Charles Dickens and so many, I can't think of the word, classic canonized writers who did that.
When it was, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I can't remember, was it published on Medium? How did that work?
Oh, it was on the Feminist Press website.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and also I had this idea that we would illustrate it somehow or have photographs or something, and so Feminist Press paired me with this amazing illustrator. I'm blanking on her name, mostly just because I have brain fog. Anyway, and so that's how it happened. It happened on the Feminist Press website. And I don't know, how do I write in all genres? I love all genres. I read in all genres. Poetry was my first genre, and I moved into essay because I was teaching the essay for so long, and that's how I became so comfortable with the genre, through teaching it. And then I've always had a prose voice, even in poetry, and that was very much a struggle for me in poetry, because people were always like, well, this is basically prose. So it's easy to switch to essay, and then the novel stuff. Soccer Chronicles is my young adult novel, and that was that's the first novel or fiction really that I wrote, and I kind of just taught myself. I mean, I had a lot of help from friends, but I didn't go to school for fiction. I went to school for poetry. So that was just something that I just wanted to do and was determined and stubborn enough to just kind of try to figure it out.
I think it's amazing. I mean, I wanted to say something about bikes, even though I'll tell you this, when you were reading, I forgot this. I forgot that, inside the bike shop, a man in his late 20s or early 30s helps me. He's a total professional, not a bike bro dick. I loved this. It reminded me that I forgot that I'd written a scene about being in a bike store in my book in an essay called Walking Tributaries, about being in a bike store in Iowa.
Oh yeah.
And just, what it's like. Maybe it's also, the importance of movement, how to get around, right? And how, what happens when that's stymied. We just moved to the big box suburb here where, you can't walk on the street. You have to have a car. There's not a sidewalk. And I think it's kind of brilliant what you capture about patriarchy and bikes and who's allowed to bike and how women bike.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you for noticing that. I read my history of bikes, which was complicated. And I didn't know, it took me a long time to learn how to ride a bike. And I got Lana, who's the bike in the book and is my actual bike. Like I could turn.
Oh yeah.
There.
Oh, Lana, nice.
And yeah, I was really scared. Yeah, I was really scared to go to the bike store, although that guy was amazing. I actually have been meaning to try to go back to the bike store and give them the book. I just haven't had a chance, and also see if he works there. And I want him to know, he helped me have this whole book, and he helped me have this whole relationship to riding. I also think it's important for invisible disabilities. I think when people think about disability, they think about people in wheelchairs, and I read something about that in the beginning, and I think there's just so many of us even living with invisible disabilities or disabilities that have changed and evolved over time. And either, mine went from being completely visible and to something that I can really, I could pass as abled. So I think it's been interesting to have the book and just for people to see, like, oh, here's a disabled person who can ride a bike. Like, that's fascinating. That's not what I expected. So sort of complicating that notion of what disabled people can do. And then, definitely disrupting sort of white male bike bro culture, which I still experience, of course, like, especially if I go to Prospect Park and do like the loop.
Right.
Definitely like a lot of like super fast dudes. It's not all white, but with really expensive bikes and really amazing outfits, who are just like, this is my park and you're in my fucking way. So I definitely experienced that, but I do think bike culture is changing a lot. I've definitely noticed that, and also in the ways the organizations and people that have responded to the book. So yeah, it's really opening up, I think, for a lot more marginalized communities, which is great.
I think that's so important and really exciting. And I struggle to learn how to ride a bike too. I just have to say, I love this, that the neighborhood is either rooting for me or against me. I can't tell, but I'm definitely a watched object.
Yeah.
That resonated.
Yeah, I mean, you write so much about that in This Is One Way to Dance, about growing up in Western New York in an Indian family and just the surveillance that was on you as a group of people who are othered. And there's something very powerful about neighborhoods and how people, and well, you were talking about moving to a new neighborhood and being like no sidewalks. Like a lot of Jamestown, like I would say like half of it had sidewalks, but where I lived was the second part of my life, my childhood life where I lived, we had no sidewalks either. So, there's something really, you're making yourself really visible when you're like walking on the berm, or you're walking on the side of the road where everybody else is driving. yeah, there's just there's a lot of
I mean, it's a hostile landscape, right? I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, I think for many people it is. Yeah, it's completely hostile, or subtly hostile, or you just know that you're a spectacle. Like I've always been interested in spectacle, the ways in which different kinds of bodies get made into spectacle. Yeah, so that's definitely there.
What was I? Oh, I mean, there's so much to say. I guess what has surprised you about the reception of the book, and what did you hope for with publishing this book, Panpocalypse?
I mean, my initial goal was to really force myself into publishing a second novel because, as I said, I kind of set up this situation where I had to. So that was a very like early goal, like, oh, I'm making myself write a second book because I was really struggling. Like a lot of people, I had lots of different like false starts. I had probably like 5 or 6 different novels, anywhere from like 5 pages to 150 pages. And then I had abandoned them. So, I mean, so my first goal was just very, like I would need to have a second book. And then I didn't know I really had no idea what it was going to be like for people to read about the pandemic. I thought the pandemic would be over completely. And so when the book came out in April, or late March and early April, like we were still really, really struggling with a lot of aspects of COVID. And so I didn't expect that to happen. So that was really interesting to publish the book while we're still in this thing. I mean, it seems like we'll be in it forever in some way. So it was interesting to see how people connected to the book. A lot of people, I think initially were like, oh, like there were some questions like, I don't know who not really from readers, but sometimes come up in interviews like, oh, do you think there's going to be a glut of pandemic books? And there really hasn't been. So that was really interesting too, because I thought there would be a lot too. And I mean, I'm sure, I think the pandemic is appearing in lots of things and there'll be a lot more. The most surprising thing, and one of the things that made me happiest, was that it made the long list for Brooklyn Public Libraries, which is like,
That's amazing.
Yeah, that it made the long list for best fiction of the year, with some really, 9 other amazing books. So that was like a really surprising and wonderful thing that I didn't imagine. And I love libraries so much. So, and the Brooklyn Public Library is such an institution. So I was just really happy about that.
Carley, there's a question in the chat from Allison Myers asking, is your dissertation available? Sounds fascinating.
It is. It is available. I'm trying to remember. I mean, it's in NYU. It's in all the like NYU BOPS library, so it's archived there, and you can get a copy there, a digital copy, through the NYU library system. I also think it's, I have an article, I turned one of the chapters into an article, which is available online, about Traumarama. So if you Google Carley Moore and Traumarama, that will come up. But yeah, it is available. But thank you for asking too.
You probably didn't expect that we were going to end up talking about 17.
I didn't, but I love that. Like, I feel like you are so good at like keeping track of all the things that I've done, which I so appreciate. So it was actually really nice to be reminded of that.
I think because I got to know you in these different ways and through reading your work, I think your work for me was a portal into, I don't know, how to write about different things. Like, what is it like to grow up in Western New York? What is it like to grow up with an invisible disability? What is it like to write about pain? What is it like to, I haven't read the Stalker Chronicles, but I was a huge fan of 10,000 Maniacs, like everybody around here. So
Yeah, I have a whole other book that is not published, that never found a home. That's about running away with a band, not unlike the 10,000 Maniacs, because I did briefly do that. So yeah, 10,000 Maniacs was such, I mean, it was so important for so many people, but especially Western New Yorkers who are like, oh, you can make things, you can like, I mean, there's so many artists in Western New York, and so much music, and so many writers, and so many painters and filmmakers. I think that it's really important to remind people that we exist. Yeah.
Oh, Dan says we have time for one more question. Does
anyone have a question in the audience? Sejal, I know we were going to also try to talk about bisexuality and disability. That's something I could talk about for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I would love that. And before I forget, I just happened that this is my favorite mug, which I forgot until I saw it. And
that's perfect. It actually looks like, initially I thought maybe I would do the illustrations for the online stuff, but I'm not an illustrator. I'm actually a terrible artist. So, but that little drawing reminds me of like the first drawing I tried to do. It's much better, but I tried to do like a very simple drawing of a bike.
Yeah, I'd love it if you had bisexuality, disability in the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, so I think the Not Wives and Panpocalypse both have protagonists who are bisexual or pansexual, and their sexuality is really like a strong feature of their character, and that it's also really a motivating force. The compelling themselves to move towards touch, to move towards sex, to move towards queerness, in particular bi-panness, and then also I think to really make space within more sort of typically gay and lesbian spaces. The Monocle is modeled after an actual 1930s Parisian bar, which we really know about because Brassai, the photographer, created a whole book of photographs around this club, but it really was almost completely lesbian bar, and very like butch and femme like of that time. So yeah, I think I don't know how to connect bisexuality and disability right now in my head, but I just think that I wanted to increase bisexual visibility. And also Eurydice is a trans woman, and I have found a lot of overlap and community with trans people and bisexual people. And I'm not exactly sure why. I think there is definitely outsiderness for both communities within the umbrella of LGBTQ stuff. So I think there's that. And I don't know, there's some kind of fluidity sometimes, and I'm generalizing, of course, but there's some kind of fluidity and movement, I think, in thinking about bisexuality, transness, and disability. Like, I think there's just a different way of looking at the world through each of those perspectives that's linked in some way, which is definitely explored more explicitly in the book. But yeah, that's what I would say for now.
Yeah, I remember that we talked about just like writing into the erasure of both, you know, of as you said, the invisibility often of disability and bisexuality.
Yeah, so I will just say that I have a Substack, and I have an essay there about Harry Styles, and sort of all of the queer baiting conversations have been really interesting to me. And also like the show Heartstopper and all the queer baiting that was around one of the stars of the show. And then he came out and he's like, I'm bisexual, everybody, so fucking chill out. And then
how do we get your Substack?
Oh, just go to Substack and if you just put my name in it, it'll come up. It's called My Subby.
Okay.
But anyway, I just saw him posting today about how we need more bisexual representation, and it's just really wild that we don't have it. So anyway, that's another little aside, but I just want to thank you for talking with me, and thank Dan, and thank Writers and Books. I know we need to stop, and thank everyone for coming too.
Thank you for coming. Make sure that you get Panpocalypse. I couldn't put it down, really. and I love how short the chapters are. I mean, thank you. I mean, for those of us.
I wanted to make a very readable, very accessible.
Yeah.
Very quick moving book. And readers have told me that has been their experience. So yeah, if you're looking for, I think the pandemic part sometimes scares people, but it's actually a light, a jaunty ride through the pandemic.
It is. It's like it's a bike ride. I mean, it's a bike ride that you want to be on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Carley for being here. Thank you, Sejal. I want to thank our funders here. I have a slide here. Thank you to our funders. Buy the book. The link is in the chat. And I want to thank everyone for coming, and have a great night.